Bible speaks of the Ark leveling mountains and laying waste to entire regions. Not something to be taken lightly. No one knows its secrets.
Jones, do you realize what the Ark is? It's a transmitter. It's a radio for speaking to God.
An army which carries the Ark before it is invincible.
Hey guys, I'm Kevin.
I'm Jake.
And this is Movie Matters. We're both a little sick, so we probably sound a little different.
Yeah.
But we're going through with it. We're talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark from 1981. Indiana Jones. I mean, classic. I grew up on these movies. I wanted to be Indiana Jones as a kid. And, like, these movies mean so much to me. I'm very excited to talk about it. We'll see how we do with being sick, but this is a fun one for sure. I've seen this movie like 100 times. This movie's so good.
Yeah. Same.
Controversial though. I like Temple of Doom the best. I think we mentioned it in one of our podcasts before.
Yeah, Temple of Doom is the best. This is probably number 2.
Yeah.
But like, not to say that Last Crusade is bad in any way.
That movie's awesome. They're all great.
Yeah, they're all really good.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull's okay.
I feel like it got a lot more hate than it deserved.
Agreed.
But yeah,
that was one of the first movies that I saw at the midnight showing at the Lincolnshire Regal. Mm-hmm. That's the town we grew up in. Jake and I, are like the theater we'd go to as kids. I saw that movie at like the midnight showing, and then I went and saw it at I saw it with my sister, and then I saw it at like 8 a.m. the next day or something, like something crazy with our buddy Adam. I just remember seeing it back to back. I enjoyed it. I liked it. It's a little goofy. The newest one, Dial of Destiny, I did not like at all. I know you haven't seen it. We talked about that
I didn't
off camera.
bother watching it. As far as I'm concerned, it's not canon.
I might go back and rewatch it, but I don't know. It was one of those movies that, lately the trend of movies that have been like, it has so much potential and it just doesn't capture that magic I was looking for. Speaking of capturing magic, I mean, this is Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, the dream team. I mean, you got George Lucas of Star Wars fame, of course. You've got Steven Spielberg of every awesome movie possible, which I haven't really watched a lot of his new movies. Have you?
I don't think so. Like, I'm trying to remember the last thing that he directed.
It was The Fabelmans, I think. I don't know if there's another one that he's done recently. I saw that and I honestly didn't like it. Another controversial take, probably. But it's that movie's kind of a autobiographical look on his life.
Yeah. Yeah, I have not seen that.
Yeah, and I haven't watched a lot of his new movies, but he is obviously an amazing filmmaker. He's legendary. He's one of the best filmmakers who's ever touched the business. I mean, I'm a big fan of him. I mean, he came up with this, Indiana Jones, and it's just freaking awesome, man. I mean, it's just, this movie has, like, it almost, watching it this time, again, putting it under the microscope and watching it under our Movie Matters podcast, I like exploring more and like looking more into these films. And this movie has action beats almost similar-ish to like Terminator, where it like goes from one action beat to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and it drives the story forward. And like that's so fun, so entertaining, and like this movie just hits just with adventure and action, and it's so fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's close to 2 hours, I think.
Yeah, it's like an hour 55.
Yeah, and like the pace though is like super quick. Like there's not much downtime.
No.
And when there is, it's brief and shoves you right back into action. It's really well done. There's just like an incredibly well crafted like timelessness to it, in like every way, which is like really incredible. Like, this is an 81. 81.
Yeah.
And like there's nothing in the script writing or the camera work or the effects that really pull you out of it and make you think like, oh, this is like a, nearly 1970s,
Yeah.
adventure movie that's like, hokey or whatever. Like, I mean, the effects at the end when the Ark is opened are probably the only thing that's like, what would be considered old or like
Yeah.
time stampable, but even those aren't that bad.
No, they're super good.
It's like in their own kind of creepy way, it like works really well.
Yeah.
Like it's like I don't know. Watching just the opening, like of him like walking through the jungle with these like whatever his like group that he like assembled to go find this idol. The shots in the jungle are amazing. His reveal, like the Indiana Jones reveal, is just so good. And like it's interesting because he's kind of an asshole in that opening, like a little bit, and then like becomes the hero, but like in some ways he's a bit of an anti-hero, because like at the end of the day he's grave robbing the shit out of all these temples and
like killing people,
and killing
he's
people,
definitely murdering people in this.
Yeah, for sure. But like he's doing it for the museum and the university that he like works for, and like he's doing it to preserve and protect these artifacts. Like that's his main motivation.
It belongs in a museum.
Yeah, one of like the best lines ever. Which is not in this movie, but
no, Last Crusade. I feel like that's in Last Crusade.
Yeah,
that's
it is
for sure Last Crusade.
But yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot to talk about in this movie, so we might as well just jump in. But yeah, I mean, it's just so legendary, like you said, and probably one of the most like parodied movies like of all time, and not even like just the concept of the movie, but there's so many iconic scenes that have been like recreated or parodied.
Oh
like,
yeah,
so much.
Well, another 80s movie that came out in, I believe, 84 was like literally just because of this movie it came out, was Romancing the Stone. I think we've mentioned it in one of our other episodes. It's with Michael Douglas, I think Kathleen Turner, and like Danny DeVito, and I think it's what's his name? Rob Reiner movie. It's really good actually, but it like is 100% a copy of Indiana Jones. But we should add it to our list because it's actually pretty good, and it's really fun. But yeah, I'd say this movie has definitely been like parodied a lot. Robert Zemeckis, excuse me, not Rob Reiner. Robert Zemeckis, and it is Kathleen Turner.
You talked about that in the Back to the Future episode, I think. Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that movie's like 100% a copy of this. But, yeah, I mean, this movie's iconic. What's funny is, I mentioned the dream team earlier of George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, and every major studio basically turned this down, which is interesting, especially with George Lucas coming from Star Wars in 77.
Like hot off of Star Wars.
Yeah. They had to persuade Paramount to even do it, which I love the kind of nod to Paramount where you've got the, Paramount Mountain, and then it transitions into the mountain that's in the jungle, which they do that in pretty much almost every movie. With the mountain, which is super cool. But George Lucas is like a genius, especially with all the deals he's made on his early movies. Like, I don't know if you know about like Star Wars, but he basically got all the toy rights
Oh
when
yeah.
he was making it, and like that was crazy because he made so much money. And with this movie, he made an unusual deal as well. The studio financed the film's entire $18 million budget, which is nice. I mean, in exchange, Lucas would own over 40% of the film and collect almost half of the profits after the studio grossed a certain amount.
Oh wow.
And this movie made a shitload of money.
And probably still continues to.
Yes. It made almost 400 million worldwide. On an $18 million budget, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's
a lot of
absolutely
money.
insane.
I mean, it's similar. Like, this movie could have been in our last month of the blockbuster movies, because Beverly Hills Cop made a similar-ish amount. So did Back to the Future. Like, this is definitely a box office monster.
Yeah.
And that's why they wanted to keep making them when Harrison Ford is like fucking 80. But he's still a badass, so I don't care. Keep doing it. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It also, like, its home video tape release in '82 for Betamax, it held the record for like most rentals until Beverly Hills Cop, which is funny. So made it definitely a shit ton of money. I mean, it's number 59 on IMDb's top 250, so it's, you know, it's up there. It's one of the most classic movies out there. It was nominated for 9 Oscars, which is awesome.
Wow.
It won 4. It was nominated. It's the only Indiana Jones nominated for Best Picture, which it won editing, visual effects, sound, and art direction. Which the art direction is awesome. The sets and like the costuming, like everything is so awesome and so well done. However, while watching it, there were some like little things I saw that kind of bothered me this time. And for example, there's one scene where Indy is in the Nepalese bar, Marion Ravenwood's bar, and he's like, that's like where that's that like bar fight, and he's shooting his like revolver, and all of a sudden it cuts to him shooting his 1911, his like Colt 45, and I was just like, oh, I don't think I ever noticed that, and I was just like, that's interesting.
So, that was watching it this time was the first time I ever noticed that he wasn't shooting a revolver in that scene.
Yeah.
Which in the other movies, I don't think he ever carries any other gun besides his revolver.
Yeah.
So this is the only movie where he has that 1911, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because he's most famous for his whip and revolver.
Yeah. And hat and jacket.
And
Let's talk about that. I mean, it's iconic. It's like I own the Indiana Jones hat. It's somewhere back at like my parents' house. But, like I own the hat. I've been him for Halloween like 3 times. It's just like iconic, and like that's why I like Temple of Doom a little bit better, because his costume in Temple of Doom just like keeps degrading over time. And we, spoiler alert, we're going to do Temple of Doom in our sequels month, which I'm stoked to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the costume's iconic. The music, John Williams' score, I mean, again, it's another George Lucas Spielberg movie where John Williams just knocks it out of the park for score. I mean, obviously you had Jaws. His Jaws theme is iconic. You have the Star Wars, Imperial March, and you've got this, Indy's theme and the Raiders theme. I mean, like, this gets stuck in your head easily.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so good. And, I mean, I used to buy the soundtracks to it and listen to it all the time just because, again, I, like, wanted to be in an Indiana Jones as a kid / like a cowboy. Like, it's just so good.
Yeah. Like, obviously, like, the main Indiana Jones theme is like everybody knows that music, but like even all the other background music that Williams composed in this is just so good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you'd call it, but like the love theme is
Yeah.
like very, very well done. And like, the like creepy music at the end is like super awesome
Yeah.
and gets like really like, it takes a movie in like that spooky direction, you know, that like the ending is like, you know, kind of creepy and scary, you know. It's like it's just really cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, Williams just did such a good job. And he does a good job in the other two as well.
Yeah.
I think Temple of Doom, part of why it's so good is that it has such a like creepy musical score, you know, to back it up. And
I can't wait to talk about Temple of Doom.
Yeah, I know. We're already talking too much about it because
I
we're
know.
gonna do it in another episode. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's enough about future movies.
Temple of Doom, yeah. Yeah. I want to touch base on the trailer. So we again, we always watch the original trailer before we do the podcast, just to kind of get in the spirit and to see what it would be like as an audience member to kind of see this trailer and get excited for a movie that's coming out. All these 80s trailers are usually pretty different than the trailers we're used to these days. This trailer was awesome. Probably, I would argue this was the best trailer we've seen yet.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. I didn't like the guy doing the voiceover, but that's okay.
Oh, really?
Like, he was like, I would expect that in a more serious kind of movie. I like, one of the nice parts about Indiana Jones in general is that it strikes like a really nice balance between like a serious adventure movie and being like a little bit like not taking itself too seriously.
Yeah. It's cartoony a little bit.
Yeah, and like, I feel like this trailer sets it up to be like a hardcore action like kind of movie. I mean,
it kind of is. But it also like,
but
I don't know.
yeah.
It's just like, yeah, I get what you're saying though.
But I mean, this is like probably the closest to a modern trailer that we've watched.
Yeah.
Where it's like showing you all these like awesome action beats and like gives you the stakes right up in the trailer, like, you know, Belloc saying like this is a transmitter to speak to God, and like,
yeah,
Marcus saying that whoever, you know, possesses the Ark becomes invincible, and like, you know, like that's like the main stakes of the movie is that like if the Nazis get this, like it's done, like we're all toast.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is really well made.
Yeah. The you know, these movies are really reliant on the MacGuffin, the certain piece or item or like plot device that moves the plot forward, and you know, the Ark is the plot device, and that's the whole, I mean, that's literally the whole plot of the movie, is trying to get the Ark. It's so simple. It's so simple.
Yeah.
And again, it's like the action beats of trying to get it, which makes it super entertaining. Again, yeah, it's so simple. It's easy. It's great. Maybe that's why it's so timeless, I'd say.
Yeah, and like it helps a lot that it's set in like the World War II, like early 40s era, probably. And like they're able to play with like historical fiction, you know, really well.
Yeah.
And that it's the same for all of the movies, do a really good job of that. Of having the like urgency or like the knowledge of like what's going on in this, like roughly in this time period, while simultaneously having all this like crazy crap going on that you know wasn't actually happening. But like it's cool because it kind of puts it in this like mythological kind of space, and like you can imagine that like this was going on, especially the way that they kind of wrap the movie up by like shoving this thing in like a government warehouse and like,
Yeah, I
all
love
right,
that.
nobody's gonna know about this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they do a really good job of that. In all three movies, I think.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, so I just looked it up and I verified. It's 1936 is when this takes place.
Okay. Yeah.
Which Temple of Doom, I know we said we wouldn't talk about it, but Temple of Doom is technically a prequel because it takes place
Yes,
before
it
this.
is, yeah.
Which is cool. Yeah, I mean, I know we're kind of jumping all over the place here, but I want to talk about the whole beginning set piece of him going in and taking the idol. And you've got, what is it, Robert, it's Molina, it's Robert, it's not Robert Molina, but the guy who plays Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2 is,
Yeah.
what's his name? I forgot. It's something Molina. Yeah, like him with the tarantulas all over him is super awesome and creepy. And then you get all these booby traps, which are super cool. And it sucks you into the world right away, which I love. It just like gets the setting going. It gets the characters going. It's, globe trotting already because it's in a different place that you're normally not used to. And then you get like the lighting in it is so good. You've got this gold light that's coming from the idol, like illuminating Harrison Ford's face, and like it's just so iconic. And he takes the bag of sand, and it's got the crazy good music. It really brings you into the world right away, and I love that.
Yeah, like they do such a good job of throwing you straight into this like mini adventure to like set up, the larger adventure of going after the Ark, and like introducing the main villain of the movie, who's Belloc, and kind of like setting up that like Indiana Jones is not a like dig site archaeologist. He is a like whatever, like a super adventurer, like you know, and like his interest isn't in finding pottery in some like established like ancient site. Like he wants to find the myths and the legends and like that kind of stuff, which like that's I don't think this absolutely is not the first movie to like use that trope, but like it's easily the most iconic. And like you said, like there's so much that's kind of like carbon copies of this. Like for our generation, probably Uncharted is like the biggest like copy, with its own spin, but like Tomb Raider also is a pretty like direct kind of not spin off, but utilizing
iteration
this kind of
almost,
template of the treasure hunting adventure, with like the booby traps and the puzzles and like that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean it's really cool, and like just to like think through like the amount of influence that this movie has had since it came out is just kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, it even like popularized studying archaeology in college and stuff, which is crazy and funny. It's almost similar to how we talked about Top Gun with it. People wanting to go into the Navy and the Air Force and fly planes and stuff. It's pretty cool. I mean, you gotta love when a movie is so ingrained in pop culture that it inspires people to want to study archaeology. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So when I was watching again the opening scene with the booby traps and everything, I was like, how did that phrase booby trap come about? Like what is that? So I Googled it. It says the term booby trap originated from the word booby, which was used to describe a slow or stupid person or bird. The term was first used around 1590 to describe the seabird. But then it took on a more like serious connotation during World War One. Pretty interesting. Yeah, it's a concealed.
Kind of only that like dumb people will like stumble into these traps.
Yeah,
kind
will
of.
fall for them. Yeah,
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting because booby trap's such an interesting, term / phrase.
Yeah.
But you've got where he says his competitor was like close on the trail, and then that booby trap comes out, and you've got that like skeleton. All the skeletons or like corpses in this movie are so cool and so creepy. You've got the competitor in the beginning. You've got his sidekick Molina. That's the actor's name. You've got him where he gets hit with one of the booby traps and dies, and then you've got like all those corpses and like skeletons in the Well of Souls when Marion is like trying to get out of there, and she like runs into all of them, and that's like so creepy and terrifying. There's some pretty scary parts in this movie that I'm not gonna lie, as a kid, definitely gave me some nightmares.
Yeah. Like that particular scene is really interesting because like if you're not paying attention, like watching it this time, like really trying to like nitpick stuff in this movie, they're like talking about the Well of Souls a lot, and then like when they finally get in there, it's like the snake pit, and it's like, okay, but like what does this have to do with a Well of Souls? And they break through the wall, and there's like hundreds of like bodies. It's like, oh, okay, like it's a cool like little like tie-in and like little like device that they use. It's cool, and like sets it up without having to make up a whole bunch of bullshit on why this wall is full of bodies.
Yeah.
Like,
the writing really ties things together, and it's like very, very smart writing. And then you've got obviously you've got that going back to the beginning again. You've got that iconic boulder chase, which is awesome. And I mean they've at Disney World they did the boulder, like at Disney they do the boulder chase scene with Indy running, which is super cool. I mean that's obviously iconic. And there's like he like trips at the end, which is like real, and then it keeps going, and they kept it in for dramatic effect, which is super cool, and it adds to the intensity. And I just love that he's got like all these spider webs all over him, and like every time he like hands Belloc something, it's like all these spider webs just come like off of him, like his gun, the idol, and then you get him running because he like runs away from the Javitos, the tribe that like is been searching for their idol, and you get him screaming to get on the plane, and like that's super iconic. He swings into the water, gets on the plane, and then you get the like little tie-in of why he hates snakes. There's a snake on his lap, and he's like, I hate snakes, and that ties in later to the Well of Souls. It's just, again, it's good writing, it's fun, it's entertaining, and again, it's like the movie starts off right away with fun. And that's how you make a movie. That's how you make a good movie. It's like, again, you just like, for me, I want to be just enveloped in this world and entertained right away. And it's a lot of movies are just like boring off the bat, and it takes a bit to get going, which I mean, I get, but like some movie, it's like not every movie has to do that. Like just be fun, be entertaining.
Yeah, right. This movie does a good job of sucking you in right away to set up the boring part, in quotes, where they explain
the arc
setup for the rest of the movie. You know? Which like my favorite parts of these movies are all this like lore that they like build in. I think it's super cool. Yeah, like the Last Crusade is probably the most lore heavy, and like really in another like a reference to another like franchise. Like it's very well, it is the prototype of the Da Vinci Code, where like they're going from like clue to clue to clue, and like there's all this like different building of like the lore around the Holy Grail, you know, which is like super cool. And like they do a lot of that in this movie as well, with building up like why is the Ark in Egypt, and like you know, you have to have, you know, the staff and it's got to be this high, but Belloc's is only this high because he mistranslated or was missing half of the translation. Like all this like cool little like stuff, you know.
Yeah, that exposition is really good. That, and you're talking where they're in like they're in like a
in like a lecture hall or something, like
you,
at the college.
Hall. Yeah, and you've got that exposition, but it's like, yeah, it's really short and sweet, but it like really sets the whole movie up.
Yeah. And like I mentioned earlier, sets the stakes, and like they do a really good job actually of like they set the stakes one time where they're like the Nazis are looking for it. It's like, ooh, that's not good. And then you know, it's like those are pretty high stakes already, and then Marcus like chimes in at the end like, yeah, whoever has this like becomes invincible. And it's like, oh, we just like ramped the stakes up like big time, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's like a great way to kind of get the viewer engaged in that like exposition kind of setting. Is like, okay, well, we're going to hit you once with Nazis, and then we're going to punch you in the face again with invincible Nazis, you know? And like,
yeah.
It's like, oh shit. All right. So this is really important. Like, time to pay attention and focus, you know.
And it also helps that, you know, we as the viewer know that Nazis are not good.
Yeah.
Especially with this being in 1936, they, you know, obviously they were starting to become a threat, and, you know, World War II hadn't happened yet. So I think having that outside information helps elevate the stakes as well.
Yeah.
And again, we kind of talked about that in our last episode on Blood Simple, where it's like the audience knows a little more. It's always interesting when the audience knows just a little bit more than the characters, or you know that the threat is a little more. Like, you don't want the Nazis to have invincibility,
right? Yeah.
So it's like, and you know what's going to happen in history. So it's pretty interesting. I like when movies do that. It again, it adds to the stakes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get to the bar scene in Nepal with Marion Ravenwood, which she's a great character. She's tough, but she's also kind of that damsel in distress a little bit. Like, she walks that fine line of stereotypical female, but also like she's a pretty well constructed, pretty strong and smart character.
Yeah.
That knows how to get out of situations, and the opening of her in the movie is awesome, with her drinking this guy under the table, and like winning all this money, and she's like the only girl in the bar, and like I love that scene. It's so cool, and like it adds to her character, and like she's great.
And like it's cool because her and Indy are both independent. And, like, they're kind of forced to work with each other, and, like, it creates that, like, the, like, buddy cop kind of dynamic. Yeah. Where, like, you know, they both have their own, like, unique motivations and stuff, but they have to kind of get the job done, you know?
Yeah. And I love that she, like, the second he says hello to her, she punches him in the face.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's awesome. That's cool. And, like, you get that iconic, which they use in the franchise often, is the silhouette of Indy, which is so iconic and so great. And, you know, you get the hat and the jacket. That That's another thing that bothered me a little bit in the movie. It's like the lighting is a little too artificial.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I don't want to look too far into it, but like going back just a little bit, the scene in the lecture hall, the lighting kind of bothered me in that scene. I don't, it's just like there's a lot of shadows. It's like there shouldn't be shadows, and the way it was lit was kind of bad, in my opinion.
I didn't notice.
Yeah, it really bothered me. Yeah. And then I just like kind of like focused on how the lighting was in other scenes, but whatever. It's a movie. We're good. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you know, his silhouette's iconic, and then you get him leaving and her putting the headpiece on that little, like, I don't know, like horse statuette or like donkey statuette. And then you get the Nazis coming in to try and take it. And like, what's the villain's name that's like got the glasses, that's like a nerd, but he's cool?
I don't know.
Toht. T-O-H-T. I don't remember them ever saying his name,
Yeah, I don't know if they ever do.
but he's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll tell you everything you want. Yes, you will. He's really, really good in it. And I like certain parts of him are just like kind of goofy. Again, like you said, it's like kind of cartoonish with his character a little bit, with him burning his hand on the headpiece and then running into the snow and throwing his hand in the snow. You also get that, like, and I know I'm jumping ahead again, but like where he's in the tent with Belloc and Marion, and he like pulls out this like almost looks like, I don't know, it's like a torture
Nunchucks
device
or something.
Yeah, nunchucks, like torture device. But then he turns it into a hanger, and he hangs his jacket, and you've got that like the music intensifies that, and I love that. It's just like his character's kind of goofy, and at the end when he like sees like the ghosts, the spirits, he's like kind of laughing, and then all of a sudden it turns into like a skull, like a demon, and he like screams, and he's kind of funny.
Yeah. Like, he's like, he's kind of like the evil gentleman, like cartoon archetype, you know? Like the guy that's like got the like twisty mustache, you know, and like, you know, ties the girl to the railroad tracks. Like, that's the kind of like vibe I get from him, you know?
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. And like, he's the only character that's in all black. So like, you know, he's the bad guy. And like, he's fairly quiet. Like, he doesn't have very many lines of actual dialogue. He's just kind of like menacingly like present, you know, in a lot of the scenes. So yeah, they do a good job of like striking that like kind of cartoony, like, with like, this is like kind of a bad dude, and like you can tell by the way that the other characters like react to him that like he almost like emanates like evil, you know?
Yeah.
And like he's a pretty cool character.
Yeah, because they based it on like serials from, I think, the like 1920s and 1930s is like what they based this on, and that's kind of why I think they kept that cartoony vibe in it.
Yeah.
Which I like. I mean, but yeah, you get the body count is high in this movie. It's like 64.
Yeah, it's pretty high.
Yeah, for a PG movie.
Yeah.
This movie was originally rated R, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there's one scene in particular. It's the ending scene where everyone's face is fucking melting.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I don't want to jump to that yet. But yeah, the bar scene. I mean, you get people getting shot in the face and bleeding, and like,
yeah, that was one thing that I noticed this time is the one guy gets shot in the head, and there's blood that explodes out of his forehead, and I was
there's
like,
a lot of
"Whoa."
blood in this movie. There's
I
a
don't
lot of
remember
blood.
that.
Yeah. Like there's other scenes of blood where, like Indy gets shot in the arm in the truck, and the blood splatters on the windshield. There's the big like mechanic dude getting chopped up by the propeller from the plane,
lot of blood.
and a lot of blood in that. Like, pretty interesting. Again, for being a PG movie, it's pretty bloody. Pretty bloody. Yeah, that bar shootout's great, and then you get Marion be like, "You're my goddamn partner," which is cool, and he teams up, and it's like, Indy always has somewhat of a sidekick in these movies, and what's cool is this movie makes his love interest his sidekick, and the other movies don't really do that, and I like that in this movie. And then you get the. I love the classic, like, iconic, and it's very part of the series. Like, each movie does this where it's got the plane going over the map, which is cool. That's kind of cartoonish a little bit.
Yeah.
But really iconic to the series. I love that. And then literally right after this bar shootout, you get into a fun chase in Cairo with Marion basically getting kidnapped. And like the basket chase is great. That's super fun. It literally it just jumps from action beat to action beat. And
that sequence also has one of the best gags of like all time in a movie, when the like giant swordsman comes out and starts like doing his like sword tricks, and then he just pulls his revolver out and blows him away and holsters it. And it's like, all right, what am I doing?
Yeah, such
a good gag.
And that was not originally how it was scripted.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know about this, but well, first off, that big guy, is the German mechanic from the plane. He's also the big, like, dude in Temple of Doom that's whipping the children and stuff. It's the same guy, which is funny. He's also in Last Crusade as something I forgot, but he's used in every movie as like the big ogre, villain. So yeah, that scene in Cairo, the entire crew except Spielberg had food poisoning, so they're all like struggling heavily. Excuse me. And basically Harrison Ford was like, "I'm too sick to perform this stunt." Like, they were supposed to have fight, and like after unsuccessful tries of trying this stunt, Harrison was like, "Can I just shoot the guy? Like, I think that's going to be the best option." And they're like, "Yeah, let's keep it." So it's pretty cool how, certain things will change in the course of filming that makes a movie iconic.
Yeah. Yeah, and like what's great about that scene is like, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's not quite breaking the fourth wall, but it's kind of like you have this big guy with a sword, and like, Indy has a gun.
Yeah.
So like the first audience question is like, why doesn't he just shoot him? And he does, and it's
it's so perfect.
It's great.
Yeah. So they filmed in Tunisia. And basically the only way Spielberg was, like I said, the only one to not get sick, and the only reason he didn't get sick is because he was eating SpaghettiOs the entire time. That's what I read, and that's pretty funny. He just had cans of SpaghettiOs, so he's just eating that. So, I like how they think, or how Indy thinks Marion dies, with the truck exploding, which is also kind of a cartoony thing where a truck just randomly explodes.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny. And then
it's full of bullets and explosives.
Yeah, I guess so. And then you get the like iconic bad dates with the one eye patch dude, like who's like watching and like giving the Nazis Indy's every move. Who's got the monkey spy, and it's sad that the monkey dies. I hate that the monkey dies in this movie.
But the monkey's kind of a bad guy.
It's kind of a bitch. It's kind of a piece of shit. He is a bad guy, but I don't know. And then you get the crazy snakes in the Well of Souls. Speaking of animals, the cobra is intense. They had apparently a piece of glass between Harrison and the cobra.
A real snake, yeah.
Which
is pretty cool. Supposedly you can see
The glass.
reflection.
Yeah.
I couldn't find it.
I
you
saw
did? Okay.
Yeah, I personally think it's when, I think I saw it. I could be wrong. I think it's when Marion falls down and then the cobra comes up, and I think that's where you see the reflection. That's or at least what I thought you did. I thought I did. I could be wrong, but
yeah,
I remember that piece of trivia.
Again, that's a cool practical effect.
Oh yeah,
and like you're not gonna like something like that. You could use a fake rubber snake, and it would be like whatever, you know.
They did a little bit. They cut hoses to like amplify the like just the amount of snakes, because they had 7,000 snakes in this scene. That's crazy. The only venomous snakes were those cobras, and only one crew member was bitten by a python on set, and that was the first assistant director, David Tomblin. Apparently, it bit his hand and wouldn't let go, so he asked someone to grab the python by the tail and like basically like shake it or like whip it so it like would unlatch his hand, and a stagehand did that, and Tomlin got medical attention, and the python wasn't injured, but like pretty intense.
Yeah.
Oh, struggling over here. And you get the iconic line that you and I both love of Harrison, where Belloc's talking to him in the Well of Souls, and he's like going to trap him. He's just like, ha ha ha, son of a bitch. I know you love that line. I love that line too. It's so good.
It always makes me laugh.
Yeah, yeah. And then again, that scene goes to the airplane scene where he's trying to steal this airplane and fails, but has to like fight all these guys. You get Marion in the like machine gun position of the airplane, killing all these dudes.
Yeah,
again,
blowing people away.
Body count's high. Marion kills about as much guys as many guys as Indy does. Like, she's adding to that body count for sure. Pretty interesting. But I also like, one of my favorite sound effects in Indiana Jones movies are the punches.
Oh yeah,
the punches are so. Yeah, they're kind of cartoony, but apparently they took baseball bats and hit like old catcher's mitts and gloves and stuff, like a bunch of leather, and that's what created the that like iconic sound.
Yeah, I mean it's a sound that I think has been used in dozens and hundreds of other movies.
Oh yeah,
probably because it is so iconic. And you also get that scream,
the Wilhelm.
Like, whoa, yeah. That one's in like every single Indiana Jones movie too.
Yeah,
and a lot of like this kind of like campy-ish action movies. Like to use that.
I wonder what the first movie was that used that. What's the first? I'm googling.
I thought we looked it up in one of the episode. Was it RoboCop that had it?
No. Let's see. The Wilhelm scream is a famous sound effect. It's been used in over 400 films. The first movie was the 1951 Warner Brothers film Distant Drums. It's featured in a scene where a man is bitten by an alligator.
Huh.
So, but I mean, they've used it. It's like so iconic, the Wilhelm scream.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and then you go to the next scene. It literally jumps to another scene of him trying to steal the truck, which is such an awesome scene.
Yeah, that's an awesome chase scene. It's so good. And it's like it's a reversal where the hero is chasing the villains, which is really cool. Yeah,
very cool. And you get that awesome stunt of Indy like getting dragged behind the truck. That's so cool. Apparently Harrison Ford did some of that himself. Let's see. There's some pretty cool. It's a famous stunt that tribute to John Ford's Stagecoach from 1939. Yeah, it's let's see. The truck was specifically constructed to be farther off the ground to allow clearance for Indy to pass underneath safely. And the center of the road was also dug out, which you can kind of see that it was dug. But they did the camera at 20 frames per second as opposed to usually the traditional 24 to kind of speed it up. Yeah, Harrison Ford was actually dragged behind the truck for some of the shots, badly bruising his ribs. Harrison Ford does a lot of his stunts in these movies, which is pretty awesome.
And he gets like injured in the production of like every single one of these movies. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Like he fucked up his knee because the airplane like ran him over apparently in the airplane scene. But he just like threw ice on it and kept going because he's a badass. Yeah. And like apparently when asked if Harrison Ford was worried about doing this stunt, he's like, no, if it was really dangerous, they would have filmed more of the movie first. Again, pretty badass. And what's cool is in that chase scene, Harrison Ford fights all of his stunt doubles, which is pretty cool. Yeah, that scene's awesome. I love that. The music's great. It's so fun. Then you get to the ship. The ship is cool. You start to get the like love connection between him and Marion, which is nice.
Which is like one of the only low points of action in the movie. And then immediately they crank it back up with a German U-boat coming to board them, which is like another great like showcase of how this movie just like keeps those action beats going.
Yeah. And I love when Indy he gets on the submarine and like all the people are like, where is he? It's like, I see him there. And like he's on there and he just like kind of gives them the like, yeah, which is so cool. I love that. And then you get, I love when Harrison's like knocks out one of the dudes, like Nazi dudes, and like putting on their jacket and it's like too tight. And then there's like another guy that comes up. He's like, what are you doing? You don't look good. Like, are you sleeping on the job? Apparently that's like kind of what it translates to. The German translates to. And then he like knocks him out and like his hat pops up, grabs it, puts it on. Like, I love that. So good. And then you get the scene where he's going to blow up the Ark with the like RPG, which is the same area that they filmed R2-D2 and C-3PO in when the Jawas when the Jawas take them. So pretty cool, little fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure A New Hope was filmed in Tunisia as well for all the Tatooine sequences.
Yep. Then there's like this always bothered me, and I finally found trivia on it. There's where Belloc is talking to Indy about like saying, "Oh, blow it up and everything, like blow it back to God," and that fly like goes into his mouth.
Yeah.
So apparently they cut out a few frames. The fly like lands in there and then flies out. But they like wanted to keep it where it looks like he eats it, so he doesn't really eat it, which is funny.
Yeah.
I always wondered that though.
It's another one of those. That's like kind of an accident, but we talked about in Blood Simple how the fly is on the private eye, through a lot of it, and he's kind of like the evil like guy, and like it's a cool little thing like that where like these evil characters like are unfazed by like weird things, that kind of happen. Like I think that's a cool kind of like trope to use.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
when you're doing some kind of like villain character,
Agreed. And then you get the like opening of the Ark, which we finally are at that moment, and it's like it pays off really well, but doesn't, because you don't know what the fuck's in there still, kind of.
Yeah.
It's got all these spirits and
but there's dust.
Yeah.
And like I love that moment where the guy the like German officer like reaches in and like pulls out this like handful of dust that's like falling through his hand, and they're all kind of just like, you can tell they're kind of like pissed, like they're like, this is it, like like what, like why did we come all this way for this, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the storm starts, and like it starts to get all like mystical inside the box, and like
shut your eyes, Marion. I love that. So this is why the movie was originally rated R, is literally the people's faces melting and then Belloc's head exploding.
Yeah.
So
which is a pretty chunky explosion.
So they kept it. That's why, like, they didn't have the flames superimposed over it. They superimposed flames over it to hide the gore, and then it got the PG rating, which is pretty insane.
Yeah, that's funny.
Because they used. Apparently, they used a vacuum machine, a time-lapsed heat gun, and a shotgun. So the basically similar to we talked about it in our Scanners episode.
Scanners, yeah, that's right.
Where they shoot the back of the dude's head and it fucking explodes.
Yeah,
basically the same thing. They use that same effect here, and yeah, pretty intense. Yeah, and then you. Do you think you get resolution at the end with the Ark being stored in that, like, government warehouse? What do you think about the ending?
Like, I feel like it's no, you don't get like resolution.
Yeah,
but it allows the movie to fit within actual history.
Yes,
like in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, great point. We're all sick. We're dying.
Yeah, sorry.
We're good.
So the Ark disappears basically from history at that point.
Yeah. Which they do have a nod to it in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, that they're in like the Area 51 factory or like warehouse and they see it. Yeah, I don't know. It's not a great resolution, but it's like you said, yeah, it's definitely fitting. It's also kind of an iconic ending with that, how it just ends with that government employee or like that employee pushing that cart with the Ark in all these other boxes where it's like, oh shit, what are all these other things that are hidden there? It's very interesting. It adds more intrigue, which is cool, and it's a fun ending.
Yeah, and like it also mirrors the opening where Indy gets the prize, but then it's taken away.
Yeah, great point. Great point.
Which like is kind of pretty much every movie ends that way.
Yeah,
in this series.
Yeah.
For in one circumstance or another, he ends up losing whatever the prize was,
yeah,
whether willingly or otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, this movie's iconic. I love this movie. I'm excited to do the sequel. I'm excited for us to feel better and not be struggling. I mean, talking this much doesn't help, especially when we're coughing and congested and stuff. So
I'm surprised I made it this far without having a total coughing fit.
I know. If you guys are watching, I'm sure you've seen us mute and cough. So yeah, we're definitely struggling. And it's kind of funny that we're both sick at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's next week? Vanishing?
No, we have
Clue.
Clue.
Clue is next week, which I'm excited. I've never seen it. I'm excited for that one. Yeah, we fine-tuned our schedule, and we've got some pretty awesome movies coming up. I'm very excited, and we've got it scheduled till the end of the year. So, yeah, we'll catch you next week. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We love this movie, and I'm sure next week we'll be feeling better and talking normal.
Yeah, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
All right, guys, we'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening.
See ya.